Up 50 times in 2 minutes, do 60 press-ups in 2 minutes, run 1.5 miles in 10 minutes and...
Now, I don't know where these people get these numbers. 1.5 miles in 10 minutes doesn't seem that fast. Let's look at why you never mess with the elite special forces. Let's go.
What you're seeing right now is a highly classified group taking over a dangerous criminal group. And trust us, that's just the beginning of the video. The next groups will shock you. And let's start with Delta Force. This is 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, elite special forces that are involved in counterterrorism.
Well, we don't know as much about Delta because they're not SEALs. So whatever information you can glean from it is from books that have been written by ex-Delta Force guys. I have met a few of these over the years. Years ago, they didn't brag about it. They were contractors at the time because they were bored. What I can take away from that, what I can tell you, is that they looked like average guy. I would have never known they were in Delta. They weren't braggarts. They didn't have tattoos that you could see that showed they were military guys. Just seemed like normal guys.
High-risk operations and daring rescue missions. What we do know is that since Delta Force was formed in 1977 by Colonel Charles Beckwith, the group has been involved in many dangerous top-secret missions. Taking down a Somalia militia leader? Easy. Rescuing an Army helicopter pilot? Easy. What else? What about Sudan?
Well, they've had a few foibles, right? We know what happened on their first mission in the desert. The helicopter didn't work. There's been some growing pains and a learning curve, definitely. And we don't know what they've really done because obviously it's top secret, which makes sense. That's the point.
Hussein. The group helped capture him in December 2003. For those of you who thought it was in the past, these guys recently took down ISIS bad guy Abu in Syria. What do you think you need to be in Delta Force? Big muscles? Maybe the fierce look? No. Pass brutal physical and psychological tests which consist of... Okay, no one knows what it consists of because everything is classified. But that's not the end. Then you're taught to pass brutal marksmanship and covert...
Well, you're already going there as a skilled operator from some branch of the military, right? So probably the biggest thing, besides the physical stuff, let's think about this for a second. Everybody's coming to the table physically capable. Do they like you? Do they want to work with you? Do they think you've got flaws that they see in your character? They become a pain in the ass. Guys of this nature, they spend so much money training them. They don't want to find out later this guy's a total asshole.
Tradecraft, CIA tactics like dead drops, where you pass secret information to another agent without getting caught, and other espionage methods during a 6-month-long course. You may think that's the most badass special group in the world. That might be true, until you hear about Russia's Alpha Group. Okay, they're terrifying. It's nothing you've heard or seen before. What they've done is the most insane fantasy of a sick person. We just can't mention...
Insane fantasy of a sick person. Well, you would think these Russians would be able to get away with more, right? Their missions would be more extravagant just because it's Russia. That's what you think. What do you guys think the difference would be between the Delta group and this Russian group? Do you think the Russians would have more latitude?
Alpha Group was created in 1974 in response to the Black September attacks at the 1972 Munich Olympics, and first gained notoriety for leading the assault on the presidential palace in Kabul during Russia's invasion of Afghanistan in 1979. But it is the group's involvement in a 1985 hostage crisis in Lebanon that earned Alpha Group the reputation of being a vicious but effective counter-terror unit. On September 20th, 1985, the Islamic Liberation Organization took hostage 4 Russian diplomats in Beirut. The terrorists warned Moscow would lose all 4 Soviet captives if their demands were not met. When the terrorists took...
Doesn't seem like the Russians are big on negotiating with these things. Kind of like the Israelis did, at least publicly. They're not going to go in and beg. We do a good job of that in the U.S., publicly speaking. Now, question for you guys, do you think all the public stuff is completely different from what we do with the U.S.? So we may publicly beg, but behind the scenes we've got the real stone cold killers. Or am I thinking there's too much intelligence and too much thought that went into this? Let me know in the comments, do you think everybody kind of does the same thing. We're talking about getting hostages, or are these other countries unique at, in particular Russia?
One of the diplomats, the time for talk was over, and Alpha Group was sent into action. What really happened is not known, but many stories say that Alpha Group took hostages of their own, relatives of the terror group, and the rest of the details are too gory to tell here. But families of relatives received packages with, you know what was in the packages. Since then, Alpha Group has participated in several high-publicity missions taking down terrorists, insurgents, and kidnappers. As with other special forces around the world, Alpha Group participates in live-fire exercises and are known to shoot at each other, hoping their body armor holds, and shoot back and hit paper targets behind the guy that just shot at them.
Tell you, I got a video on this one, check in the description. I guess if you're at this level, it doesn't seem like this would matter. Let me back up. So if you're at this level, does all this extra training matter? So you know the body armor is going to work, otherwise you wouldn't get shot. You're not trying to kill the guy. Shooting towards a paper target. I just wonder if it really makes a difference. If you're going to do it, you know you're not going to hit him. I guess it's more for the person standing there than the guy shooting. It's hard for me to believe this is an effective training tool, because you wouldn't want a mistake to happen and you hurt a big asset, which is the guy you've been training for all these years.
Instead, Alpha Group shooting drills are considered one of the most dangerous in the world.
Yeah.
Okay, the next group might not be as deadly as the previous one, but they're well known for their brutal training. The Kabiles are a special operations wing of the armed forces of Guatemala. Sweating and exhausted recruits jump blind from a 33-foot platform into a narrow river and march 12 miles through a grueling uphill course loaded with equipment. Okay, you might be thinking, what's the deal? Few years of training and you're okay with it. But do you know that you might be forced to eat dog and snake entrails? What about to be exposed to tear gas? We might offer something more.
Oh boy, tear gas. Running out of things to talk about. Now, these countries such as Guatemala, in most of these countries, the super duper high-tech SF guys are trained either by the Russians or the US. At some point they're allies, and they're the ones that have the most money to help train these guys up.
Polite. In a class of about 40 candidates, only 7 or 8 make it to the end and become Kabiles. What about being part of Duvdevan? Duvdevan, also known as Unit 217, is the Israel Defensive Forces elite undercover counterterrorism unit. What these guys do is something straight out of some...
Now you think the Israelis would have a leg up here. They always have a threat from their neighbors. There's always something going on, terrorist related, in the borders of Israel, so they always have to have these guys on the ready. You think about Munich, right, what they did. Doesn't seem like they play around with topics if someone messes with their citizens. And you hear a lot about the Mossad.
They're often disguised in Arab civilian clothes to infiltrate terror cells. It might sound creepy, but in fact, they're trained for it, and in 2017 alone, they conducted over...
Doesn't sound creepy, it sounds like the way you do it, right? And the big thing about these high-end SF groups is you can send anybody to kill a person. You can just drone strike it. But you want to capture them. You go in, no one even knows you're there. You take them back, and you get intel. That's where these guys really fit into the arsenal. Because if we know where the person's at, we can drone strike it. We can send in Marines, Rangers, whatever, just snatch and grab.
300 successful missions. And to cover that many missions in 365 days, you need to have a few squads operating independently. The training itself isn't easy, but it's nothing like eating dog entrails. It takes 18 months, and during this time you learn Krav Maga and counterterrorism. But that's not the end. After this, remaining candidates receive another month-long advanced inter-unit counterterrorism course. When the unit is...
Well, these type of guys are always doing some new course, right? Some new class. Whether it be learning how to do field craft, trade craft, how to fit in language courses. And that's where the big difference is between, let's say, a Tier 1 and other Special Forces unit. The amount of money they put in training, they're always doing something. So they're a very expensive asset to our arsenal because of the trainings. You hate to see these guys leave the military And when they do, they become well-paid contractors somewhere.
Confident in the trainees' abilities as a counterterrorism operator, they begin a 4-month undercover course that includes everything from learning the Arabic language and Arabic traditions and blending in with civilian camouflage. Okay, we all know SAS, the famous game. The Special Air Service is an elite unit under the British Army founded in 1941 as a regiment and later formed again as a corps in 1950. But have you ever asked yourself, what has SAS actually done? Until we go there, did you know that it's highly classified? The British...
All of these things we hear about, whether it's SAS or a Delta, you don't even hear the word Delta. You just hear the word, we got a hostage back. And typically they'll give credit to somebody else. The SAS, we know about the embassy. We know the SBS with respect to the boat. But you're not going to hear a lot because the point is these guys are secret, right? They can give credit to another conventional unit, but they may be doing things which they probably are all the time, right? We never hear a word about it.
Government didn't make any comments due to the secrecy and sensitivity of their operation. But let's get back to their accomplishments. In the 1980s, they rescued 2 hostages in the 1980 Iranian embassy siege. On August 2, 2000, 11 men from the Royal Irish Regiment were taken hostage by Sierra Leone rebels called the West Side Boys. Some of the hostages were released, but threats were made against the lives of the rest. SAS stepped in, and with the help of missiles and machine gun fire, the rebel buildings were cleared and all the remaining hostages were rescued. To successfully perform its missions, the recruits are chosen very carefully.
What would happen if, say, third world country terrorists, which almost have no training, taking somebody hostage, it was like a real significant threat? So say it was another country's government who had Delta Force type operators, how well would they fare? Because we've been fighting, in particular the U.S. and its allies in the desert, a pretty much untrained, unsophisticated group. You just wonder if it's back like, for example, World War II, where you got the Nazis, the Germans, and the U.S., both well-trained, well-financed militaries. How would they compare if it's an even matchup? That's my question. Let me know in the comments.
Among 200 recruits, less than 30 finish the training. That's because you need to sit up 50 times in 2 minutes, do 60 press-ups in 2 minutes, run 1.5 miles in 10 minutes and 30 seconds. If you're okay with it, then it's an 8-mile march in 2 hours while carrying 25 pounds of equipment. Then
all of these standards of physical fitness tend to be a little softer than you'd expect. Now, it's probably secret what they do expect, but ultimately everyone coming here is in shape enough. In the SAS's example, they're probably in the Royal Marines. They were in some paras maybe. They were in some kind of high rev unit. They're not like a supply clerk for 10 years. Is the mental part right? Do the guys like them? What's going to trip them up? Thanks for watching.